So I'll pretend I just started. Good morning, everybody. Let me have a drink of my coffee. So, do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Now that we kind of know where we are. Remember, I was talking about the syllabus, and I was saying during the introduction to the class, the first kind of lecture, that the syllabus is important. Remember to go back and check it every once in a while. We tend to get kind of reliant upon our professors to tell us what it is that we're doing. Have a little bit of what do you call that? See, my brain is still a bit foggy. Have a bit of self motivation to see where we are. Look at the syllabus often if you don't know what it is that we're supposed to be doing or what we're gonna be talking about, etc. It's how I keep track of where it is that we are, although I remember what it is that I talked about. But again, I'm trying to be kind of in line with where we are, what it is that we're supposed to be doing at a certain point in time. So we've been talking about critical thinking. So let me close this. Oh, did that ever come up? Yes, it did. I look the same every time. Okay, so anyway, so know that the lectures are here in case you miss one, especially for the first labs where we're not really going from a book, we're just going from my notes and my thoughts about things. It's important to understand what it is that we're talking about. And so far we've been talking about critical thinking, right? So I can close this. No, I don't want to close this. I want to stop sharing is what I want to do. There we go. So let's talk about the brain, our human brain, and let's talk about I was so good before class started, and now my brain is it's on spurts. So right now we live in a society, and we tend to be, okay, so what are some of the characteristics of our society right now? Not just, and maybe I don't mean society, but I mean the environment that we live in. What's one of the big things that's different from, say, 10 years ago?
I would say like everyone's a little bit more accepting. We're not quite there, but I think at least from what I've seen 10 years ago, people are a little bit more open than they were, if I'm wrong. If I'm correct, sorry.
Okay, so people have are more open-minded. Is that what you're trying to get to?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
Okay, I'm not going to make a judgment call on that opinion. It is an opinion. More acceptant of change. What else?
The entire COVID situation changing. This is the first time. I'm an old geezer. This is the first time this has occurred in America. Not even in 1919 did they do this. This is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's crazy. I don't know how you mean the word crazy. Is it crazy to close everything down? I don't know if it's crazy, but it is a crazy situation. I'll agree with you on that. So the whole COVID thing, yeah, go ahead.
I didn't mean crazy in the negative context, more like it is unknown. We're running blind currently.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's kind of how because like I said, we have to be careful about how we communicate. And I'm not I'm just going to use you, Patrick, as an example. I think you can take it. And I know that you didn't mean it this way. So, but like when he said it's crazy, that kind of, what is it, right? I have to define what it is. And so that's why I said, is it crazy? Does he mean that it's crazy to shut everything down? Does he mean that COVID-19 and what's happening in the environment that we're in, this is a crazy situation? And that's how I took it, and that's how you meant it. This is just an unprecedented, crazy situation. And no, things did not shut down when Ebola was a thing. We've never shut down society like this. So one of the things that we have to deal with now, and actually this is very, very, very recent and very overwhelming, because it's taking in all facets of our society and influencing all facets of our society. Even interfamily relationships. Like, I haven't seen my mother-in-law, well, I see her every once in a while, but she hasn't come over, or we haven't gone over to her house to visit or to spend family time since this whole thing kind of started. Now, my wife has gone over, and they sit in the backyard, and they sit, you know, far apart. And because my mother-in-law is 80. So, and she has diabetes, and so she has, you know, risk factors, but she hasn't basically left the house since this started. So it's affected our interpersonal family relationships. It's affected, obviously, how we go to school. My daughter is at school in the other room, which sounds very strange, but they're online too. And so what happens is, and we're online. And so one of the things that I want to clip onto is how COVID is affecting our thought processes. But before I get to that, what are some other things that are different than, say, 10 years ago, COVID being the obvious one? Political polarization. Yeah, we're very polarized, although I think we have to go back further than 10 years to get to a place where we weren't as polarized as we are now. Although, here's one of the things that I have observed. Again, when we talked about, what was it that I talked about on Tuesday? My example was, my brain doesn't work. Help me out.
Minimum wage.
I'm sorry?
Minimum wage.
Oh, minimum wage. Thank you so much. I forgot about, I forgot what it is, the example that I used. When I talked about minimum wage, right, I was trying to show you how, you know, a thought process can be a bit flawed or have some issues with it, and it's not really critical thinking, even though it kind of sounds like it. And so when I went through my kind of argument about something without really taking a side, I was trying to point out the flaws in my thinking. So COVID-19 is one of those things that we can examine also under the critical thinking eye, because I'm pretty sure everybody has a bit of an opinion on that, just because it's kind of all pervasive. Computers have improved. Yes, they have. And I'm trying to get to a little bit of a technology thing. I know that somebody said technology as a whole is good, Elizabeth, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get to a little bit more of a specific set of things that have changed a lot and changed the way our lives are, at least in Southern California, where pretty much we're all kind of surrounded by technology, excuse me. So what is a big thing that has really changed?
Social media.
Thank you. Yay. Quantum computing. No, I mean social media. So what are some ramifications of that social media has to us as individuals? I should not include myself because I have a virtually zero presence in social media. So just name some stuff.
I think a ramification could be is, especially, you know, for people who are, you know, vulnerable and older, the plight of, you know, fake news and all this false reporting and that kind of stuff. And we know that Facebook had a play in 2016 with all these false information, and it was misinforming our election, and without that it would have been a lot different.
Okay. So let me boil that into something a little bit less specific than that. How about and let's not fall into a political discussion in the chat room, please. No, I'm just looking at the chat room. So how often does somebody normally is using some kind of social media? How often do we as a whole kind of use it all the as a society? And again, I have to be geographically, I think USA, I think California, I think Southern California, right? Because we're in a different place than, say, if you lived in Wyoming or Mississippi or someplace else. So I can only talk from my experience group, but in geographical situation. So how often are we accessing social media? How often are we doing stuff on social media? And don't be shy. Don't tell me what you think is politically correct.
Many people are on social media several times a day, but there's so many different types of social media now. Game players have their own social media when they're playing the games. There are, you know, the obvious ones like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, but there's web forums, enthusiast forums. There are literally thousands of different types of social media now, without exaggerating.
Yeah. No, that's true. So how often are we on it?
I
you said several times a day.
Several times a day.
You said several times a day. Now, Robert, you said all day. So what do you mean by that? What do you mean all day? I don't know if you can do anything all day except for breathe.
I mean, it seems like just any free time people have, they're on their phone and they're accessing some type of social media.
Okay. So does that sound correct? Do we kind of have a consensus there?
Yeah.
That when you have free time, so as soon as class is over, do you check your phones?
Yep.
Actually, you shouldn't say yes. What you should say
when class is over?
Yeah, exactly. So you're like, oh, no, not when class is over. I check it constantly. I'm checking it now. Right? Yes? Do we agree? Yes.
Yeah.
I know that you check your phones during class, and that you have Instagram and what's the other thing? Snapchat.
Twitter.
And when yeah, go ahead. What else? What else are we checking?
Twitter.
Twitter? It's for school purposes, please. We can't hear the horn blasting, Valerie, because I think you muted yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, I muted
You
it
check.
on purpose because the person
Yeah. Okay. That's
my house is
that's
doing it constantly. I just want to spare you guys.
no. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for thinking of us. Blackboard notifications are my favorite. See, somebody has a sense of humor. So what does that? What does that do to our brains when we're constantly almost? Here, let me put it to you this way. I rewatched the lectures. No, that's not social media.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, but what happens? Let me ask you a question, and again, just answer me honestly. What happens if you don't? And I don't know if you can even imagine this. This is such a horrible scenario. But let's say that you had to leave your phone somewhere for a couple of hours, and you did not have it with you, and you didn't have access to it. What are some of the things that would happen?
I would be bored.
You'd be bored. Okay. I'd cry. You would not die, Ezra. You might feel like dying, but you wouldn't die. We get anxious. Right? So anxiety is one of those things. We get bored and we get anxious. So why are you bored? Why would you be bored?
We are used to getting onto our phones and quickly going to social media when we wake up or just whenever we have the chance or literally any day at a time. So if we don't have our phones, it's like, what are we going to do now? Like, we're so accustomed to this routine of jumping onto social media whatever time of the day. So it's just really going to mess up our whole schedule that we have created with our technology.
Okay, so what happens is that we're used to doing it, right? You're used to seeing something on your phone, to checking something new. And what do we need? What happens when we can't do that is we don't know what to do. Because basically we have removed, and I don't know who said hobbies, but we've removed kind of the things that people used to do when they had free time. So in reality, even though social media and checking your phone and replying and talking and posting things and reading other people's posts is more of a social or fulfills a social need, like talking to somebody and having a conversation with somebody is being social. What happens is we become very reliant upon that because we're used to having that instant access all the time. I can access whatever it is I want and not be bored. So we don't have the kind of traditional things that people used to do. People used to have a hobby. Well, some of us still have hobbies, but right. And so when you had some free time, you would do whatever it is, quilting or stamp collecting or, model planes or RC stuff or etc. Whatever it is, playing guitar, doing whatever it is that you do. And so what happens is because social media is kind of invasive, not only is it part of everybody's lives, and I say again, everybody, in a generalized term, what happens when you don't have the social media? Well, first off, when we are checking social media, we don't seem to have a lot of free time. Does that resonate with people? Do you guys see yourself as, I have all kinds of free time? At the end of the day, do you go, wow, I had a whole crap load of free time today. I didn't have to do very much. Or, and here is my kind of belief, does social media take up all of that free time so it doesn't seem like you're resting? It doesn't seem like you've had a lot of free time. Nobody needs a guitarist, Alex. They're a dime a dozen. Everybody needs drummers, but that's a whole different concept. Go ahead. Does it seem like you have a lot of free time, or does it feel like your whole day is filled up with stuff?
We could say we have the free time, but if we're going to speak honestly, like the way you're seeing it, then we definitely don't have the time that we say we do.
Yeah, no, I understand. And that's really my question. My question isn't for you to objectively evaluate whether you have a bunch of free time, because you do, because, you know, you pick up your phone. My phone isn't even in this room, as some of you couldn't stand it if your phone wasn't sitting next to you. My wife is always, when you're at home, I don't even bother trying to call you when I'm somewhere else, because I know your phone is never on you. Again, that is not a good or bad thing. That's just how I am. But the point that I'm trying to get to is that I don't think that we feel like we have a lot of free time at the end of the day. When you look at when it's evening time and you're getting ready to go to bed, I think we all as a society feel more and more overwhelmed. Every little bit of the day has something in it. We're always doing something. And I think having the phone in your hand all the time fills up those little gaps. And what happens is, and there's a study that's been done, is we get kind of information overload. So our brains get constantly bombarded with information. Now, social media information, for the most part, in general, what is it? A distraction. From what? From sitting around not doing anything? Is it bias? Please don't try to just tell me, what is most social media? Most of the social media posts, what are they? What is it? Just tell me. Be straight. Don't try to fit it into this class or it's critical thinking,
Memes.
that kind of stuff. Uh-huh.
Opinions.
Okay.
Selfies.
And? I'm sorry?
Selfies.
Selfies?
Entertainment
Go on.
and propaganda.
See, you're trying to make it like propaganda. Do we really want to argue about, you know, Instagram posts? Are they propaganda?
Politics have been big
For the most
lately.
part, probably not. I'm sorry?
Politics have been a big thing on social media lately.
Yes. But for the most part, again, it's like you guys are students, so you guys fall into the student trap always. And the reason is because there are things that you find or think sound important. So you answer, when you answer me, you don't want to say the mundane stuff. And I know that probably there is a lot of COVID news on social media. There's a lot of political stuff right now with the whole Black Lives Matter and social justice kind of thing going on. But still, I'm going to guess 80 or 90% of all of the things on social media that you do on your phone are nonsense. What I mean by that, and what I mean by nonsense is, and I don't mean BS, but although it is kind of BS-y, is that it doesn't really have, it's not informative. It's more entertaining. It's more well, I guess nonsense is really the only way to put it now that I'm thinking about it. it's more like this, your friends are doing stuff and they're showing you things, or what we think are our friends, because a lot of people on social media we don't know, we just follow them. And so a lot of things that we get, all of this information coming in, and how much of that information is really important. And I'm going to say, and I'm just going to make a judgment call here on my part, and you can disagree or agree with me, but I'm going to say at least 80% of the things that we do on social media has no real informational value. Most of the time, it's not even showing us what our friends, how they feel. It's just like, you know, my daughter does something where she's got her phone and then she does a little, you know, video clip and then she posts it. It doesn't tell me anything about how her day is going. It doesn't tell me about, you know, how she feels. I can kind of see what she looks like, and so I can tell in that way. But really, it's about something or replying to something, and that also has kind of no meaning. It's like we're all talking to each other in the most superficial way possible all the time. Does that make sense? Do we agree? Is there some kind of do you disagree? I know, Patrick, you agree. You're in my age group. We think all of this is mostly nonsense. Okay. So how does this affect, and by the way, don't get me wrong, social media has its uses, there is a value there. I'm not saying that it's valueless, that it's complete nonsense all the time, that there is no place for social media, that it's evil. Don't infer anything from you know, what it is that I'm saying. Okay, because a lot of students, you kind of think that you know how my thought process is going by what it is that I'm saying, and then you infer out to a certain point where you think, oh, my professor thinks social media is totally horrible and it should be banned and it's evil and blah blah blah. That is not the case. Okay, so there is value. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that a lot of times we use things in a nonsensical or frou-frou way just because it's fun. Okay, we don't have to think about things that we post for the most part. You just post a little thing. It's just a little tiny kind of fragment, and then our part in posting things, so pushing the information to others, is relatively small compared to what we pull in, because there's a whole bunch of people out here that are doing little things on your Instagram and your Snapchat, and you're getting all of that stuff constantly coming in, and it's just little things, and it makes us laugh, or it makes us like have a small, ooh, oh wow, or it's funny, or oh, that's super sad. And it's just a little tidbit. And don't get too negative. Let's not everybody get too negative about social media just because you think that that's what I want to hear. So what ends up happening is we have we get used to having information come in that we don't really have to think about. We see it, we react to it in whatever way. It's funny, it's sad, it's, oh, that's interesting. But then we dismiss it and we move on to something else very quickly. Okay, so we move on. And I'm not trying to make it, like I said, I'm not trying to make a judgment on social media. I'm not trying to see or tell you what the impact on society for the better or for the worse. I'm just saying this is kind of what it is. And without any of that stuff. So what happens is we are living more and more in a society where we're bombarded with information. And a lot of that information is trivial. That's the word I was looking for before. It's trivial information. It's little snippets of things. It's a meme. And a lot of memes are just, you know, oh, I never thought of it that way. But here's the trick, or here's the little caveat there. For the most part, we are used to using social media in a certain way. And the way is that I wish I had this is the one time I wish I had my phone, because I keep doing this. We have our phone, we look at the information that came, and then we either reply or we don't, and we dismiss it, or we move on to the very next thing, because it's a constantly very fast, very quick medium, I should say. It happens all the time. We're constantly getting information coming at us. And so even a lot of times when we have something that would make us go, this is an interesting concept, or I never thought about it that way. We've trained our brains, or we're in the habit of not looking at it and absorbing it the way we did before. We just move on to the next thing. So you guys in the chat room need to calm down, because everybody's getting all crazy again, right? There's all kinds of things that happen on social media, okay? So my point is, I'm trying to, and I do have a point, is I'm coming back to the critical thinking. And that is that we live in a society where we basically, most of us suffer from information overload. There's too much coming in. And so that means, or that has an effect, I should say. And one of the effects is that we tend to rate the importance of information the same. So when I say something, or when you hear something on the news, or you read something, we kind of trivialize that. We put it down to the level of what the kind of information that we're used to getting all of the time, which are these social media posts, these things that come in constantly. And so it's very difficult to train our brain to stop and say, whoa, this is very important. I need to sit down, or I need to think about this without being, and by the way, having a train of thought without being interrupted 50 times, you know, trying to think about something, trying to have a conversation with somebody about an idea or some thoughts or beliefs that you might have, without being interrupted constantly by this device that we have, you know, with us all. Oh, let me check this really quick. It makes our brains and our trains of thought always go bink, 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 and we're always thinking about something else, which is the opposite of how human brains kind of want to work. We want, in order to really think critically about something, we have to focus like a laser beam. We have to have a train of thought that from start to finish without distractions. When you study, when I was a kid, it was always, hey, be in a distraction-free environment. You know, don't let yourself, we don't want to turn the television off. The television was the big social media thing in my day that everybody thought was evil. So, you know, you turn the television off. You don't have, you know, a bunch of people in the living room talking. You want a distraction-free environment, and then you sit down and you study, or you do your homework, or right? Well, that's almost impossible now. because when I talk about how it would, you would feel if you don't have your phone with you for a couple of hours because you left it at home or it doesn't work, it's at the repair shop, you broke the screen, right? We get really anxious, and anxiety causes us not to be able to focus too. So we really live in a world where we have a lot of information coming in, and by the way, our brains tend to see all information as having the same value. So I'm not saying that social media is essential or not essential, that it's good or bad. What I'm trying to get to is I'm trying to say that we need to be aware of the impact that social media has on how we think. Whether that is good or bad, it doesn't matter. We need to be able to understand how human beings think in order to make sure that when we really need to think, that we know how to do it, and that we don't take all of this trivial information and rank it, because that's what our brains want to do. So now we have to fight. We're training ourselves by using social media all the time, having a phone, having that thing in your hand all the time, never having, if you don't know what to do for 10 seconds or your brain isn't busy reading something for 30 seconds, you're bored. Right? So we have to kind of be aware and not just go through life and go, well, I don't know, it's so difficult to do stuff, I'm always busy, right? Realize where your time is going. Look at it objectively. Realize that all of this trivial information is crowding our brains. And so it takes more effort to actually look at something that's important and make an informed, critical thinking kind of opinion or decision about it. So let me give you a couple of facts about our brains. So we live in, and most of us live in, a society or in a time where information overload really is a problem. Now, does it affect us? Does it cause us to behave differently? No, not really. It does cause us to always have this thing, right? But we don't seem outwardly to be, to behave any differently than we used to. But the brain itself has a difficult time separating trivial information from important information. And so in order for us to overcome this kind of information overload, it used to be, you would watch the news or you would read the paper and somebody else is making the decision about what is important. So they're already editing out all of the things that they think are trivial. So if you sit down in front of your television and you watch the news, they don't tell you all of the news. They tell you what somebody has said. Okay, we're going to start with this story, and then we're going to cover this story, and we're going to do this story. Then at some point, we're going to get to the weather, and then we're going to cover this story. And if you watch, Channel 4 or you watch Channel 5 news, evening news, or Channel 2 or whatever, you'll see that the big stories are a lot of times the same, but the smaller ones, are different. So somebody is making the decision about what news that you hear. Whereas really with our social media and our electronic devices, it's not just social media, it's the whole electronic internet world. We get a lot of stuff unedited. So everything is coming at us all the time, from what is important to trivial. And our brains have a hard time separating that. Now, in order for us to then separate that, we have to think for ourselves. So we have to make a decision, what is a trivial piece of information that may be interesting, and what is important. We have to kind of decide that for ourselves, which is really a big difference in how information and news and facts used to be delivered to us. Like I said, it used to be you'd have a newspaper. So there was a newspaper editor who said, this story goes in the newspaper, this story goes in the newspaper, this story does not go in the newspaper. But now we just have everything, boom. So our newspapers are, you know, hundreds of pages long. And now we have to become our own editor. What's important to me? What is not important to me? What is interesting? What is essential? What is trivial information that I may be interested in? Obviously, you know, we wouldn't all be on social media if we didn't think trivial information was interesting or funny or served some purpose. But what's important, and what do I actually need to make an opinion about or have an opinion about that's a thought out, educated opinion, a critical thinking opinion, one that I've reasoned opinion. And so that becomes a lot harder. And so we spend time trying to figure out what's important. What is important information? What's trivial information? Which most people didn't really do all that much. Again, I say most people. I said we didn't really do that all much in the past with the way the media worked. I shouldn't say the media, I mean media worked in the past, because most of the time somebody else was making that decision for us. So what happens is when we're trying to sort out the trivial information from the important information, it taxes our brain. It causes us to use brain power. And that makes us tired because we're making a decision about something. Is it trivial? Is it important? And the more decisions we make, the more tired we become of making decisions. So at some point, our brain just goes, I don't care. And so social media has really cut that kind of limit down a lot because we're constantly having to decide. Now, our brains are more powerful enough to process all of the information that's coming in. But we tend to feel the more information that we get about too many things at once causes human beings to feel overwhelmed. Wow, there's just too much stuff. I don't have any free time, even though you might, but it doesn't seem like we do. So it's overwhelming. Or, you know what, at the end of the day, I've spent so much time on social media and doing all this trivial stuff that I really didn't do anything productive. So we feel unproductive a lot of times, or sometimes, and not a lot of times, but sometimes we really feel unproductive because we have all of this stuff coming in. We're trying to process it, and then we don't get to what it is that we need to get to. And why didn't we get to it? Well, we were too busy not being bored. We feel unmotivated. It's like, it's just too much, right? At the end of the day, it's very hard to be motivated because our brains are tired. We have all kinds of, and by the way, having online classes and doing these Zoom meetings, that's an electronic way of getting information, is very different from being in a classroom with each other. Because you can't really see me. You don't know what's going on. You don't get a lot of the facial and hand things that I do, although I don't know how big I am on your screen, but I certainly don't get that feedback from you guys. So the way we're communicating, even though it kind of seems the same, is not. It's more engaging in the classroom. It's easier to be focused, and I'm sure you realize that because a lot of you are on your phones or you're off doing this because this is kind of boring. What's going on? You have your videos turned off, etc. So we just get tired, and we get tireder. And Yeah, I miss the classroom too. And a lot of times you think of people who work, like let's say the quote unquote farmers from the past and even now. You know, they were the people who got up when the sun came up and they started working, hard work in the field, drive the tractor, do the plowing, do the harvesting, you know, work, feed the cows, feed the pigs, work all day long. They have lunch, they work in the afternoon, the sun goes down, they go in, they have a few hours of rest time where they read, talk to the family, etc., etc., and then they go to bed and they start all over again. Those were the people that probably, when you saw them at the end of the day, weren't really all that tired most of the time. Because that's just, they did physical work all day long. But we get, and they didn't get mentally exhausted. They didn't have, you know, all of this crap bombarding them all the time. And they probably weren't the most worldly of people. And again, I'm making kind of generalizations. But, you know, they knew what they knew and they weren't worried about all this other stuff all the time. And we tend to be bombarded with stuff that, and what I see happening is we're forced to think things. We need to have an opinion about something. We need to, I should be engaged in this somehow because everybody thinks it's important or it's something that's trending right now. So I should have an opinion when in reality you really don't want to have an opinion. So, and I'm not talking about anything particular. I'm just saying that these waves come. So my point here is that information overload is a big deal. Preach. Information overload is a big deal, and it affects how we make important decisions. And we all need to be aware of that. We need to understand that this is the norm, and this is something that we have to deal with. So when it comes time to making an important decision, we need to put actually extra effort into it. Because the first thing is to separate it. It is important. Then we have to look at it and really analyze it. Otherwise, you don't really have an informed decision, a reasoned decision, a reasoned opinion, an informed opinion. And I mean, and when I talk about decisions or opinions, I know that they are two separate things, but they're interchangeable when it comes to critical thinking, because the way we reason out an opinion that we have is basically the same process as, you know what, I want to buy a house, or I need to make a decision about something. I need to reason it out also. The process is the same. The information is different, and how we evaluate it is different, but well, even how we evaluate it isn't really that different. So that was my point for today, is that information overload causes critical thinking, the critical thinking process, to be a lot harder. And the reason is because we are human beings. And our brains are not really computers. And so we are influenced by that. Does that make sense to kind of everybody? And I got a little bit sidetracked, but I'm going to tell you a couple of things. Ooh, look, everyone is here. I have 75 students, so that's a good thing. So since class is over, or has been over for a while, nobody reminded me 4 minutes ago. I want to tell you that we're not going to have labs today. Okay, it's our Friday today, and we're going to have plenty of lab time. I'm going to do labs both Tuesday and Thursday of next week, and I will lecture to you. But today, easy, Hector. Today there will be no labs. Okay, so don't bother showing up. I won't. Okay, I'm not going to bother. But here's what I want to tell you. On Tuesday, we're going to talk about how the brain is like a computer and what our limits are. Okay, and then we're going to talk about groupthink again, a little bit. I talked about it last time a little bit, but we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about groupthink. And then we're going to talk about crap. It's a synonym. Crap. And then we're going to talk about, and probably Thursday, we'll talk about crap and trying to start to take this critical thinking process to apply it to programming. And by the way, next week, I will give you a kind of a short, probably a writing assignment, a little thing that you have to do some critical thinking about something. It's just trying to find a topic that isn't like, isn't going to set everybody on fire. We'll do that next week also. I'll give you a little assignment. You can turn it into me, etc. And so we'll have our first kind of thing to do. Okay, so are there any questions from anybody? Everybody's like, I'll just stop talking. Okay, so if you have questions, you can stick around. If you want to talk to me about something, you can stick around. If not, I will see you next week. Have a good weekend. Don't think too much.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye. Have a
Don't
good
sound so
weekend.
enthusiastic. You too.
Bye, Professor. Have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye. You too.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. Does anybody still need me? Or are you guys just the guys who logged in and then walked away from your computers?
Oh yeah, I walked away, but I just wanted to tell you that I actually ordered the audio interface and the microphone now. If you
Oh, what
remember.
mic did you get?
I just got an SM57.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I God damn it. I wanted you to get the Sennheiser 609 or whatever the hell it was.
Why did you say so? I just went with the cheaper
Well, I
one.
mean, you know what? I thought about it. I meant to mention it last class. I forgot. No, it's personal. It's a selfish reason because I want to know how good it is. I did a little bit of research again on mics, and I think instead of buying the SM57, I would have bought the Sennheiser. Having said that, though, just because you can hang it on the, you can kind of place it on the amp in front of the speaker.
Flat. But
yeah, and just.
The real reason I
Go ahead.
went with the 57 is I was looking up stuff about both of them, right? And what I noticed is that generally the Sennheiser mic is a little bit more fuller on bass and mids, or not mids, but like it's a little bit of a fuller sound. And for mixing, especially if you remember the type of tone I'm going for, big fat orange amps and whatnot, I don't think that's going to be great. It's going to sound a little too muddy, like.
Well, I remember your big issue with the 57 was, it's got that mid scoop.
Yeah, but I started.
But the mid scoop is probably good for you because it's going to cut that a little bit.
That's what I was thinking exactly, because I was like, well, I won't like the way it sounds just tracked, but maybe in a mix it'll sound like the bass from the other instruments,
exactly.
And the natural, all that will just sort of bring it back. Maybe not fully, but in a little bit.
Yeah. So and it's one of those processing thing. It's the post recording thing. You can always add or subtract. So what'd you get as an interface?
Oh, just the same Behringer one you got. Yeah.
It's awesome. if you did a little bit of research on those interfaces, you know that they go up in price. They get very expensive, and
Yeah,
really they don't have a better feature set. So, and by the way, the components in there are really good. So the internals, the electrical capacitors and stuff are actually good. Their quality. So I think you'll be happy with the interface. And then your mic is a 57, and actually you can kind of use it. Some people do vocals on 57s too. Just like the 58, you can kind of, they're kind of the same mic. Except they're tuned just a little bit differently. So, you know, I've recorded instruments with a 58 too. And I know people that use a 57 to sing into because they like the sound a little bit better. So it's a versatile mic. You can't go wrong. So you can't go wrong with the 57. So it's probably a decent choice, and it's $20 cheaper, I think, than the 609, or $10 or $20, $20
like
cheaper.
that,
Yeah. But the reason I said, damn it, I wanted you to get the Sennheiser is because I wanted to have at some point an opinion of, am I recording still? I thought I paused this.
It says you are.
Stop. I am recording. Stop.